Hi, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to another Women Soaring event. This year, WSP chose to celebrate both Women's History Month in March as well as Earth Day in April by focusing on the theme of women environmentalists. Today, we have the honor of interviewing this year's WSP art exhibit top artist, photographer, and marine scientist Oriana Poindexter. This exclusive interview has been made possible through the generous financial support of the MiraCosta College Foundation's Innovation Grant. Before we begin our conversation with Oriana, we would like to acknowledge and give respect uh, to the Indigenous community and land on which our colleges stand, starting with Sierra College's land acknowledgement. With respect, we acknowledge the Rockland campus of Sierra College as the traditional and unceded land of the Nishanan and Miwok peoples. The secret ravine, known in Nishanan as Hoyok, is home to an ancestral village site protected for generations by local tribal nations and their members. Sierra College commits to an ongoing relationship with the United Auburn Indian community and other local tribes, and to respect the legacy of the first peoples of this land and their future generations who are an integral part of the Sierra College community.
And now for MiraCosta College's land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Payokowichim, the people of the West, as the traditional land caretakers of the land on which MiraCosta is built and its surrounding traditional cultural landscapes. Today, the Payimkowichim is known as Luiseño, and they are made up of 7 bands: La Jolla, Pala, Palma, Pachanga, Rincon, San Luis Rey, and Saboba. We, the MiraCosta College and community, acknowledge that we are visitors on Indigenous lands and pay our respects to the Luiseño, past, present, and emerging. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be part of this community in Luiseño territory and to honor their history, culture, and perseverance of spirit.
Now that we have respectfully acknowledged the land, we would like to briefly introduce ourselves. I am Jane Lee Skaife. I teach sociology and ethnic studies at Sierra College and co-founded the Women Soaring Project with Jackie as a way to honor and celebrate women who have often been ignored and overlooked in history. Each year, we select a theme under which we highlight the achievements of historical women. This year's theme is focusing on women environmentalists.
I'm Jackie Lowe. I'm an instructor at MiraCosta College, Southwestern College, and San Diego State University, and co-founder of Women's Soaring Project with Dr. Jane Lee Scaife. Jane and I are best friends who created WSP as a resource to learn and be inspired by incredible women in history. Today, we'll be talking to Oriana Poindexter, whose piece was selected as the winning submission for WSP's Women Environmentalist Art Show.
Oriana is a photographer and marine scientist working at the intersection of art, science, and the marine realm. She earned her degrees at Princeton University and the Scripps Institute of Oceanography at UC San Diego. She went on to work for nearly a decade with academic institutions, government agencies, and environmental organizations as an expert in the sustainable seafood and fisheries management arenas.
Oriana's work has been featured by the Getty Museum, the Wall Street Journal, and she's created interpretive visual exhibits for the Aquarium of the Pacific and the Birch Aquarium. She founded Pelagic Projects in 2020 to focus on interdisciplinary projects that engage the senses, inspire awe, and impact positive change for the oceans. Oriana is based in San Diego, where she's working on her first book, The Iridescent Ones, to visualize the natural and cultural history of abalone species in the Pacific West Coast. All right, welcome, Ariana.
Ariana, thank
Hi.
you again for taking the time to do this exclusive interview with WSP. And congratulations again on being selected as this year's top artist for the Women Environmentalist Art Exhibit by the WSP Advisory Board. Uh, so let's just start off a little bit about, can you please tell us all a little bit about yourself and how you got into both photography as well as marine science? Is it something that you discovered simultaneously, or did you discover each passion at different times in your life?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for selecting my piece. I'm honored to be here and to be able to share a little bit about my work with you. Um, I grew up always around the ocean. I was really lucky. My parents took us to the beach all the time as kids, and I always just really loved that environment. But I never really considered that that could be a career path or part of my career path until later in life. Um, I went to undergrad thinking I wanted to be an eye surgeon, and that
Oh,
derailed pretty quickly. Um, and I actually ended up discovering photography in as an undergrad, discovering visual arts and really exploring um, that direction in a way that I had not expected when I first got to school. Um, After undergrad, I came back to California, and it turns out it's not a linear path to just become a working artist. So I ended up going to grad school for marine science at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and there things kind of started coming together in terms of the science side of my life and the artistic side of my life. But it's definitely been a long process, and always ongoing. I think as I navigate between these two fields that are thought of as very separate, but for me they come from the same place of curiosity. And I've always viewed both the sciences and the arts as really similar in terms of the way that um, both scientists and artists just kind of like go down rabbit holes on ideas that are potentially really obscure and that other people are not very interested in. And um, to me, those kind of avenues of thought conceptually are really similar. Obviously, the outputs are very different, but um,
yeah. And
I
during the
think
Renaissance
that's
period, right, that, kind of
yeah,
art and science were
yeah,
aligned. And there was that same idea of you have this hypothesis, go through several rounds of experimentation, and then you have this, yeah, outcome or something like that. But yeah, I
yeah.
could definitely see the two sides aligned.
Yeah, so for me, it's been kind of a ping-pongy path between the two. Since I've kind of always had those as parts of my life for a long time. Yeah.
That's so interesting. In the description of your artwork, you referenced Anna Atkins, the
Hmm.
British botanist who was the first person to use the cyanotype to create the first photographic book in 1843.
Yeah.
And can you tell us more about Anna Atkins and how you decided to explore cyanotypes for in your work?
Yeah. So Anna Atkins is this really incredible historical figure. She was a woman in the 1840s, using these like very, very new chemical processes. The cyanotype was invented in 1840, and by 1843, she had created the first book ever made of photographs. Um, and I had the opportunity to see some of her original pieces at the Getty Museum last summer, and what really struck me about them was that the species of seaweed that she was selecting to print were incredibly fragile, incredibly delicate, like very technically challenging. Like I avoid them because they're hard. Um, and so the what really impressed me about that was like this woman must have had incredible dedication and like commitment and drive to figure this process out and to record these species, and she that that must have been a very scientific mind in order to create what she created. um and to me, the a lot of people ask like, oh, how did you come up with the idea of using seaweed to make cyanotypes? It's like I they've been that was the
They've been
first
done,
idea.
right?
Yeah. I'm just kind of making them a little bit larger than Anna had the opportunity to, and I'm able to dive, which is likely something that Anna did not get to experience in the 1840s. Um, to my understanding, she was collecting seaweed from the tide pools and pressing them, as opposed to what I'm able to do today is to free dive and to actually go out into the ocean and collect what I'm looking for and record my specimens in that way. But to me, it's always been really, really important to be able to honor that history of Anna Atkins and to kind of carry that forwards through the work that I do. Yeah.
I love that you're honoring her, just her work back then too, and just also to kind of build upon it too, because you're kind of covering uncharted territory that probably maybe a lot of women back then couldn't really for various reasons do, right? Whether it was social or economic. So I think it's really amazing that you're highlighting her history and her biography in your own work. And so, in addition to Anna Atkins, are there any other women environmentalists, either in the past or the present, who inspire you today? And also, just in general, do you think that women bring a unique perspective to the environmentalist movement?
Yeah. So I'll start with the other women environmentalists. Historically, kind of moving forward from Anna, I Ellen Browning Scripps, whose Scripps Institution of Oceanography is named for, actually made seaweed pressings as well with her sister, and there's this album of her seaweed pressings that she made in 1905 with some little like teeny tiny photographs of the La Jolla coastline, which are almost unrecognizable now given the changes that have happened, both natural and man-made. um and in my mind, there's like a little stepping stone, like from Anna Atkins to Ellen Browning Scripps, and then um, this a woman, a professor at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, Jennifer Smith, she teaches phycology, studies algae, among other things, and I learned how to make seaweed pressings from her when I was a graduate student, which doesn't translate directly into the way that I make my cyanotypes, but it got me kind of thinking about the physicality, the materiality of seaweeds, which took a couple years to percolate, and then I started making these works later on. But to me, that's kind of the stepping stones of of women and seaweed through time, um, for at least in
Nice.
my rear view. Um,
So, yeah, just continuing that vein of, a woman in the field, are there any challenges that you faced? And, what important lessons have you kind of learned along the way?
yeah, I've always been very comfortable in water, and I grew up as a competitive swimmer, so to me, deciding to start diving was not a big kind of departure from what I felt I was capable of doing. But I know that for a lot of women, especially scuba diving, is really daunting. That all of the gear that you have to carry on your back is 40 to
Hmm.
50 pounds. I avoid scuba diving when I can because of it, and I prefer free diving because I just feel a lot. Um, I just feel better in the water. I like to be able to move quickly in water. But I know that that can be an obstacle. I have not had a lot of experiences where I've felt that um, because of my gender, I have been um, kind of left behind or not taken as seriously. But I know that that is um, an unusual situation, most likely. In
Hmm.
graduate school, I felt um, actually really positively, kind of really surprised in a positive way that I was surrounded by women, both as peers and as professors at Scripps, and so that was a really wonderful experience to have.
Oh, great.
And
And you free dive in one single breath when you're
Yeah,
collecting. So do you do a
yeah.
lot of breathing exercises and to kind of
I sh-
train
I
or?
probably should.
Oh, okay.
I don't do a ton. I definitely could do more. But I've been freediving since 2015.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and I think unknowingly my my background as a competitive swimmer for the first 20 years of my life was probably the best training I could have done, um, to build up that sort of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
aerobic lung capacity for water specifically. But um, I definitely could do a lot more breathing
Oh, okay.
exercises
I was
than
just
I
asking. My
than I
husband's a
do. But
surfer. Yeah.
I just
I was
hate doing them
asking
on
because,
land.
yeah.
I hate doing it on land.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah,
Um,
I try to there's a couple of friends of mine, one of whom is one of the only female freediving instructors in San Diego. We go out and do some line diving in the La Jolla Canyon every once in a while. which is a nice way to train in the water and in the ocean and not have to like be laying on your bed doing breathing exercises.
Yeah,
It's more fun
definitely.
that way to get into it.
It's
Yeah.
been incredible, like just kind of reading up on like the records in terms of like how long people have held their breath and how deep they've gone. Can you reveal a little bit about how, like, in terms of time and also the deepest dive you've ever done?
Yeah,
Or
I've never gotten into the numbers side of it. Personally, I like the reason I go is to explore and to observe and so I took my first freediving course just because I wanted to sit down there longer with a camera. Um, but I've done a couple courses at this point, mostly with my friend who's an instructor, and the deepest I've gotten on a line is 100 feet.
wow,
But I'm not interested in the competitive side of things. But what the human body can
Right.
do, breath of air is really amazing,
yeah.
and it's entirely mental. The freediving instructor community has a funny saying that it's freediving is 90% mental and the last 10% is in your head.
Oh, I've kind of heard that something like that with golf, I guess, funny enough.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
that it's a very individual sport and it's a lot of mental kind of, but different
Yeah.
as far as the
Yeah, there's
physicality, I would
definitely
say.
some physicality involved, like you're kicking, you're holding your breath,
Yeah,
you're, in water, but yeah, once you kind of learn the basics, it's entirely in
yeah.
your head. Yeah.
Back to your the seaweed, or the kelp and stuff like that. I was that you were talking about how fragile some of those pieces were, and I would describe your work too as really, some of the it's really beautiful and it has the like a fragility to it. And but I also think that your art actually lies more in the making of it, the process rather than the document of the cyanotype itself. Similar to Jackson Pollock, for example, with his action paintings, right? Those are actually more of a document of what actually happened, the happenings
Yeah.
that were occurring and that spontaneity of the process of painting. Do you view your art in the same way? Because I know you also hold maybe some workshops and do something, with people
Yeah.
being present there also.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the the word documentation is very important in how I think about what I do. I think of these as documents, as records of these individuals that I'm collecting from the ocean. They're individual specimens that I select and then I bring back and that I then record in this kind of strange way. Um, Scripps has this amazing um, collection, a marine collection with millions of jars of ocean creatures that are preserved, and they make up this like library of the ocean, and that was part of what attracted me and got me interested in going to graduate school in the first place. I was just obsessed with this idea of there being a library of the ocean, and like what do I have to do to be in there? Um, so I view what I'm doing as kind of this documentation of the biodiversity of a certain area. And I've been focusing on the area where I have most accessible to dive, which is kind of the La Jolla area right now. But something I want to do in the future is to kind of dedicate a couple months in different locations along the coastline or in different coastlines and kind of work in a way that makes a portrait of a place in a really comprehensive manner um, by collecting and cyanotyping or using other photo-based processes. So yeah, I think that the documentation aspect is really what I'm interested in the first place. And
Hmm.
the fact that I can create these beautiful things in that way is like a bonus. Um, but it's the going out and finding and like recording that's exciting to me. Yeah.
And that actually is a nice segue into one of our questions on intersectionality. So,
Mhm.
how do you think your photography actually informs marine science, and how does marine science inform photography in those two areas?
Yeah. So I have always thought of myself as an observer, kind of to feel most myself when I'm kind of observing, collecting, documenting, visually kind of collecting information in that way is what I mean by observing. Um, and so I still collaborate with scientists at Scripps and specifically the researchers that are working on kelp forests. And we talk about what we see out there, what I'm seeing when they're not diving, and what they see when I'm not diving, and vice versa, and what might be happening, or where's the new growth of kelp happening, or like this stand of kelp is gone now. What happened? So we're able to kind of trade information back and forth in that way, which is really exciting to me. Um, and I'm able to kind of interpret their work in a way that they wouldn't be able to,
Mhm.
based on kind of the tools that they have at their disposal and the methods that they work in. But I think paired together, it's a powerful combination to have both. Great.
And it just reminds me of a lot of things that are being documented nowadays with photography in terms of the change of the environment.
Mhm.
Like recently, there was an article that came out that traced like the difference in Lake Oroville in terms of its capacity just in a matter of 2 years and how drastically different it looks. So, in terms of your own photography, have you seen an extreme difference over time in terms of what you have been studying just and capturing via photography?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the kind of time period that I've been in La Jolla and diving in La Jolla has kind of lined up exactly with it's the last large marine heat wave we had was in 2014, 2015, which was the year I started grad school. And that year, I remember there was so much kelp. There was so much more kelp. And I remember you used to get stuck surfing in kelp when you were out surfing, not far out to sea. That never happens anymore. There's been a significant change in the density of the kelp forest that we have right offshore, just in this 10-year period. And despite some really cold winters and good upwelling seasons in between, we haven't seen that really come back to the levels that it was before that heat wave, and going into this summer with what could be another really strange oceanic summer. Um, it's
Yeah,
not
I saw those
we don't
reports of
know.
the
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I saw some recent reports of the fish washing up. I think it was in Texas, or where was it? I
Okay.
can't remember. Because of the they were dying of asphyxiation, I guess, from the lack of
Yeah,
oxygen in the water and
yeah.
that sort
There's
of thing.
some.
But I did listen to, do you listen to that podcast, Ologies by Ali Ward?
I know
She's
of it, but I
a,
don't listen regularly.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but I
Because that
know
was
of it. Yeah.
reminding me, I saw one of your projects, the book that's upcoming, the iridescent ones, is on abalone, but they were doing a segment, I mean, slightly different, I guess, but it was on scallops.
Hmm.
And but she was talking about the algae bloom and how the the kelp that was dying, I guess, removed the kind of coverage for the animals that would, for protection and that sort of thing, and the result of all of, the kind of backlash. But it's a great podcast, I guess, or informative for
Yeah,
us
she does an amazing
non-science
job.
people.
She does an amazing job. I'm curious to go find that episode about scallops, and I always like listening
Yeah,
to things that are about, these very precise
yeah, I
subject
learned a little
areas.
bit about, yeah, it was about, I think the difference in scallops between diver scallops, sea scallops, and then bay scallops, and farm fishing, and
Hmm.
maybe some how the detriments maybe of farm fishing as well, and um the how I guess scallops are a little different from, I don't know about abalone, but different from oysters that just stick in one position, where they're actually able to kind of move through some jet propulsion.
Yeah, I
um,
would highly recommend searching for YouTube videos of scallop swimming. They're very cool.
Yeah. I was like,
There's
"Oh, I had no
Like
idea." Yeah.
so cool. I
But
really want
yeah.
to see one in real life. I've never seen a scallop swimming in real life. It's on the bucket list.
Yeah.
that's what I'll be searching after this.
I would highly recommend it. Yes.
So
um,
with the workshops that you have, that you do, is there do you have like an educational, or activist goals in the work that you do, or um how do
Definitely,
you view it? Yeah.
definitely educational, and I don't connect with the term activist for myself personally. I feel that what I do is much more kind of encouraging, giving people knowledge and information, and encouraging them to do what they will with that, and to encourage folks to go out and observe and document on their own, and kind of give them the tools to think critically and go forward from there. The workshops that I have been teaching about cyanotype and about seaweed include both kind of an art and a science aspect, where we start off by talking about a little bit about the history of cyanotype and the chemistry and how all of that works, and then move on to kind of a local species ID workshop, depending on what species either I've brought for the workshop, or if we're able to actually go out and collect together, then that's also an opportunity to kind of see what people find on the beach, and talk them through what they're looking at. And then everybody gets to make their own cyanotype prints, which is really fun and satisfying. And it really makes me happy to get a room full of adults playing with seaweed. So that's
Yeah, Jane, you should come
always a
down.
victory.
I'm always finding a reason, trying to find a reason to come down to San Diego because well, Jackie and I also met at UC San Diego. I don't think we ever
Okay.
told that to you. And we both went there for our undergrad. So
Oh,
Scripps is
nice.
very familiar to us.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you should
Yeah.
come down. I'm teaching my next workshop on July 16th in Encinitas, and it's actually on the same day as I'm having a show with a friend of mine who's a Kyotaku artist, with a Japanese fish printing
Oh,
technique.
wow.
And so I'm teaching a workshop in the morning, and he's teaching a workshop in the afternoon in the same place. So if you're interested, that would be a good day. Two
Well,
birds, one
that
That
sounds
sounds
amazing.
fun.
I just need to talk to my partner about
Yeah.
taking a trip down there and watching the kids for us.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna make art and bring it back, and then you'll have something to put on your walls. So there you
It's
go.
very intentional and has a purpose. But I'm very curious because it was going back to the question about women in environmentalism, in the environmentalist movement, because you noted just really empowering people in terms of Anna, and then also Scripps and your friend. So I just want to know, like, if there's something that's unique about the from a woman's perspective that's informed the environmentalist movement that you think that maybe others have just not have thought about, because I hear in terms of my background with sociology, we hear a lot of stories in different industries, even with the automobile with safety.
Mhm.
It didn't we didn't really properly do the seatbelt until a woman engineer got involved.
Really?
So so it's one of those background stories. So I'm curious about environmentalism and what your thoughts are with women's perspectives.
Yeah. I don't have a concrete example that's anywhere near as good as that seatbelt one. Um, but I hate to kind of generalize in a way and say that, women observe the world in a certain way versus men. But I do know that specifically the world of psychology, the study of seaweed is full of women. And I don't know what that says about women or seaweed, but that's, I always found that interesting. Um, and the
It's
world of
umami.
fisheries, the world of kind of finfish fisheries is much more male, traditionally
Yeah.
male heavy, and still to this day. And so
Well,
I
there's actually a history behind that word. I believe it was a cultural belief that superstition that women brought bad luck on
on
fishing boats.
yeah, well, and then there's like the sushi chef thing that like women's hands are too warm for the fish, right? Um, but yeah, I don't have any concrete example other than just kind of anecdotal observations. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's amazing that haven't you've had all these amazing women that have inspired you in the past, right? That's a great sign in my mind. Um,
Yeah.
I don't Jackie, I don't know if you wanted to ask the, last follow-up question
Oh,
about future projects?
yeah, I wanted to hear more about pelagic projects. Am I saying it right?
Mhm.
And then also about your upcoming book, because that looks exciting too.
Yeah. Yeah, so Pelagic Projects is my company. It's me, myself, and I at the moment. And it's mostly for when I'm collaborating with larger projects with other institutions. So the last, well, and this is ongoing still, I collaborated with a group based in Peru called Coast to Coast Movement, working on developing a educational curriculum for students in rural small scale fishing villages. And we wrote that in English, but for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. And so they're going to take that and translate it into all of their languages. That was a really cool project that kind of we just finished around the first iteration of the curriculum in February, March. I don't recently. Time is disappearing. Um, but so that's Pelagic Projects is me working on things that are bigger than just me. So when I partner up with other organizations, the book is an ongoing project that I started in 2020, March 1st, 2020, actually. Um, and that's going to be about the 7 species of abalone that we have on the West Coast here. And I've written most of it. I actually just last night finished and submitted the application for the last round of funding. So hopefully that's successful, and I'm able to wrap that up and get it out into the world soon. But it's photographs and writing paired together. The first the first chapter of the book is there's an exhibit at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium right now that is sort of the first chapter of the book. But there's
Oh, okay.
seven chapters, one per species, and the exhibit that I have right now at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium is about white abalone, which is the species that kind of launched the project. So yeah,
And what drew you to abalone specifically? To
kelp, kelp, and their shells are they're just
beautiful.
absurdly beautiful. I
What
my last
creates that iridescence? In
um it's so I have a million of them everywhere on my desk
oh
everywhere.
wow,
Um they
oh wow. I feel
I
guilty knowing I've eaten abalone, back
well,
in the day.
I mean
Not realizing its extinction, or its,
yeah, it was a really iconic seafood here for a long time.
yeah.
And there is actually aquaculture for abalone now. So there's a couple farms in California, and then in Japan and Korea and China, there's a lot of abalone farming that happens. So there's still abalone kind of as a culinary option. The
Mhm.
iridescence is actually called nacre, and it's made up of
Mm.
lots of little kind of different layers of these aragonite and calcite tiles that kind of build up this like prism of
Oh.
light bouncing around, and that's how you get the different colors, are the different thicknesses of little tiles of calcium and aragonite.
Yeah.
I love always hearing about the science behind how things are, so I had no idea that's what causes the iridescence.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful, and it serves no functional purpose in the animal's life. It's hidden until it dies. Like it just is beauty for beauty's sake. Like there's no functional purpose of that beauty. It's
So,
incredible.
it's like the appendix.
I guess if the
There's no
appendix were
reason.
really shiny and pretty. I mean,
There's no functional purpose.
the shell obviously serves a purpose, but like that inner layer being so beautiful doesn't have any purpose.
Interior decor, maybe something like
Interior
that.
decor, yes, maybe abalone really they've got good
Interior
aesthetics.
designers
Yeah.
of the ocean. Yeah.
Never know.
Yeah, but yeah, I got I first learned it. I didn't grow up eating abalone. I didn't they weren't part of my childhood or my kind of family culinary tradition at all, but I started finding the shells diving, and then I started learning a little bit more, spending more time in the kelp, and um, I eventually had the idea to apply for some funding to work on um, what has turned into this book. But starting out with the white abalone, which is the one that is one of two that's listed as federally endangered, um, and that's the two of the suite of seven. All of them are protected, but two of them are on the ESA list. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for your book to come out, though,
Thank you.
and your workshop. If I can get down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, should we close out then?
Yeah,
Are you
sounds good.
okay? So thank you again, Oriana, for showing up in this virtual space via Zoom to answer our questions. And we really appreciate the incredible work that you've been doing to bring greater attention to intersectionality in the environmentalist movement. And then also special thanks again to Miracosta College's Innovation Grant for making this interview possible with Oriana. And I wish you and everyone all the best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.